Nobody at the elite private school ever spoke to the billionaire's deaf son until one day a poor girl walked up to him and began signing fluently, leaving everyone speechless. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Daniel Richardson stood at the edge of the schoolyard, his heart heavy as he watched his 8-year-old son Ethan sitting alone on a bench, methodically arranging his toy cars in perfect rows. The other children raced past him, their laughter echoing across the playground. But Ethan remained in his own silent world, a world Daniel had desperately tried to protect but couldn't seem to break into. "Mr. Richardson," Mrs. Collins, Ethan's teacher, approached with that familiar look of concern. "I wanted to talk to you about Ethan's social development. He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant with his academics, but he's different," Daniel finished, his jaw tightening. He'd heard this speech 1,000 times, ever since his wife Amanda passed away 3 years ago, leaving them both to navigate Ethan's deafness together. Daniel had become fiercely protective. He'd hired the best tutors, enrolled Ethan in the most prestigious private school in Chicago, and ensured his son had every advantage money could buy, everything except the one thing he needed most, a friend. "The children just don't know how to communicate with him," Mrs. Collins continued gently. "We've tried teaching them basic sign language, but—" "I understand," Daniel cut her off, watching Ethan trace letters in the sand with his finger. The boy was spelling words, always spelling, always thinking, always alone. That afternoon, Daniel knelt beside his son as they walked to the car. Ethan's bright green eyes, so much like his mother's, looked up at him expectantly. "How was school today, buddy?" Daniel signed, his movement still a bit clumsy despite years of practice. Ethan's small hands moved gracefully through the air. "The same. Nobody talks to me. It's okay, Dad. I have my books." Daniel felt his chest tighten. At 34, he ran a billion-dollar tech empire, commanded boardrooms full of executives, and could negotiate any deal, but he couldn't give his son the one thing that mattered most: connection. "Tomorrow will be better," he promised, though the words felt hollow. As they drove home through the tree-lined streets of Chicago, Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror. Ethan was sketching in his notebook, lost in his imagination. The silence in the car wasn't comfortable. It was lonely, echoing the gap Daniel couldn't seem to close, no matter how hard he tried. That night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, Daniel stood in his son's doorway, watching the gentle rise and fall of his small chest. Pictures of Amanda smiled down from the shelves. Amanda, who had learned sign language fluently, who used to make Ethan laugh until his silent giggles shook his whole body. "I don't know how to do this without you, Amanda," he whispered into the darkness. The next morning brought an unexpected change. Mrs. Collins met them at the school entrance with an unusual sparkle in her eyes. "Daniel, I have some interesting news. We're getting a new student today, a transfer from the public school system. She's Ethan's age." Daniel barely registered the information as he walked Ethan to his classroom. Another student meant another child who wouldn't understand, another potential disappointment for his son. But as they reached the classroom door, something extraordinary happened. A small girl with golden blonde hair was sitting at Ethan's usual desk, her little hands moving through the air in fluid, perfect sign language. She was practicing conversations with herself, her face animated and bright. Ethan stopped dead in his tracks, his green eyes wide with shock and something Daniel hadn't seen in years: hope. The little blonde girl looked up from her practice session and noticed Ethan standing frozen in the doorway. Without a moment's hesitation, her small hands moved gracefully through the air. "Hi, I'm Lily Grace Parker. Are you Ethan? Mrs. Collins told me all about you yesterday. I'm so excited to finally meet someone else who speaks in sign." Daniel felt his breath catch in his throat, the fluid movements, the natural expression dancing on her face, the way her eyes lit up with each gesture. This 7-year-old girl signed like someone who had been immersed in deaf culture for years. There was an elegance to her movements that rivaled professional interpreters he'd hired for business meetings. Ethan's bright green eyes darted nervously between Lily and his father, uncertainty flickering in his delicate features. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, clutching the straps of his backpack like a lifeline. Slowly, hesitantly, he stepped into the classroom, his movements careful and measured. You really know sign language?" His hands asked tentatively, the movements smaller and more cautious than usual. "Like really know it, not just the alphabet?" "Of course I do." Lily's face absolutely lit up with genuine joy. Her smile was so radiant, it seemed to illuminate the entire classroom. "My little brother Noah is deaf too, just like you. He's 5, and I've been talking to him in sign since he was born. I learned because I wanted to be the first person to tell him, 'I love you,' in a way he could actually understand." She patted the desk next to her enthusiastically. "Want to sit together? I saved you the best spot by the window. I thought you might like watching the birds outside. They're like little sign language dancers in the sky." For the first time in 3 long years, Daniel watched his son smile. Not the polite, practiced smile he gave to adults who tried too hard to connect with him, but a real, radiant grin that transformed his entire face and made him look like the carefree child he should have been all along. Ethan practically bounced over to the desk beside Lily, his backpack falling forgotten to the floor in his excitement. "Mrs. Collins leaned in close to Daniel, her voice filled with awe. "I've never seen anything like it in 30 years of teaching. Lily just transferred here yesterday from Lincoln Elementary. Her mother said they needed to switch schools for personal reasons, but she wouldn't elaborate on why. The girl is remarkable. She's been helping our other kids with basic signs during recess." Daniel nodded absently, his attention completely captivated by Ethan and Lily. They were already in an animated conversation, their hands flying through the air like butterflies as Ethan excitedly showed Lily his prized collection of miniature cars, explaining the different models and years. Lily listened with rapt attention, then began telling him about her favorite books, acting out different characters and making Ethan laugh silently until his whole body shook with joy. "Dad," Ethan signed to Daniel, his face absolutely glowing with happiness. "Lily knows the whole story of the secret garden in sign language. She's going to teach me new words I've never learned before, and she says there are songs in sign language that tell stories." As Daniel drove home that afternoon, Ethan chatted excitedly from the back seat. It was the first time he had voluntarily shared detailed stories about school in months. Every gesture was animated, every expression full of life. "Lily has a brother named Noah who's deaf just like me. She learned sign language all by herself because of him. She said tomorrow she's going to show me this amazing game they play with colors and shapes that helps Noah learn new words." That evening, Daniel found himself actually looking forward to the morning school run for the first time since Ethan had started at the academy. But as he tucked his son into bed, listening to more excited stories about Lily, a nagging question lingered in the back of his mind. What exactly was Lily's story? Why had a child so young mastered sign language so completely and beautifully? And why had her family suddenly needed to change schools? The next morning, Ethan practically ran into the classroom with more energy than Daniel had seen from him in years. Lily was already there, carefully arranging an intricate display of colorful cards, small toys, and picture books on their shared desk, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. "Good morning, Ethan," she signed brightly, her face beaming with excitement. "Are you ready for our color and emotions game? I made it up to help Noah learn how to tell me when he's feeling different things. It's super fun, I promise." Daniel lingered longer than usual at the doorway, utterly mesmerized, watching his son engage so naturally and joyfully with another child. Lily's enthusiasm was absolutely contagious. She had Ethan laughing silently within minutes, his shoulders shaking with delight as she acted out different emotions, using exaggerated facial expressions and creative gestures. "Excuse me, are you by any chance Ethan's father?" A soft, hesitant voice behind him made Daniel turn. A woman in her early 30s stood there wearing a simple navy blue dress that had clearly seen better days. The fabric was faded, and there were small, neatly patched tears near the hem. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tired ponytail, and dark circles shadowed her bright blue eyes identical to Lily's. "I'm Grace Parker, Lily's mother," she continued, extending a hand that showed the telltale signs of hard work. Rough skin, short nails, tiny nicks on her knuckles. "Lily hasn't stopped talking about Ethan since yesterday afternoon. She signed his name at least 50 times during dinner last night. Thank you for letting them be friends, for letting her belong somewhere." Something in her tone struck Daniel as deeply strange, almost desperate. "Thank you? Why would you thank me for that? They're just kids being kids." Grace's eyes flickered with an emotion Daniel couldn't quite place. Was it fear, shame, relief? Not every parent is understanding about children like Noah, like Ethan. Lily had to change schools twice before because other parents complained she was being disruptive when she would interpret for Noah during school events, or when she got upset defending him from teasing. She paused, glancing nervously at the luxury cars in the parking lot, then forced a bright, unnatural smile that didn't reach her tired eyes. "Anyway, I should really get to work. I have an early shift today. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Richardson." She hurried off before Daniel could respond, leaving him standing there with far more questions than answers. There was something about Grace Parker that didn't sit right, a bone-deep sadness that ran much deeper than typical single-parent exhaustion, and an evasiveness that suggested she was running from something. That afternoon, Ethan bounded into the car with more energy and excitement than Daniel had seen in years. "Dad, Lily taught me 15 brand new signs today, and she said this weekend she might be able to show me how to teach Noah some new games that help him when he gets scared or sad." "Noah is Lily's little brother, right?" Daniel asked, though he already knew the answer. "Yes, he's 5 and he's deaf like me, but Lily says he's really, really smart, even smarter than some hearing kids. But she also said some kids at their old school were really mean to him, calling him names and making fun of the way he tries to talk out loud sometimes. That's why they had to move here." Ethan's hands moved quickly, his excitement and indignation equally palpable. "Can we please have Lily over for a play date sometime? Please, Dad, I promise I'll be good." Daniel hesitated, sensing undercurrents he didn't fully understand. Something about the Parker family situation felt complicated and potentially painful. But seeing Ethan's hopeful expression and remembering how happy he had been, Daniel couldn't bring himself to refuse. "I'll talk to Lily's mother tomorrow." That night, Daniel found himself researching Lincoln Elementary School online, diving deep into demographics and reviews. The public school Lily had transferred from was located in one of Chicago's most underserved neighborhoods, underfunded, overcrowded, with extremely limited special education resources and no dedicated sign language support. Why would a devoted mother move her deaf son out of a school system where Lily was desperately needed as Noah's interpreter into a wealthy private academy, where Lily was the only student who could communicate with Ethan? And how had a 7-year-old managed to become so fluent in ASL that she surpassed some of the professional interpreters Daniel had hired over the years? The pieces didn't quite fit, but one thing was becoming crystal clear. Lily had given Ethan something absolutely precious and irreplaceable, genuine connection and friendship. On Friday afternoon, Daniel gathered his courage to approach Grace Parker as she hurriedly picked Lily up from school. She looked even more exhausted than before, if that was possible, and he noticed her glancing nervously around the parking lot filled with gleaming luxury cars, her shoulders tense with obvious discomfort. "Mrs. Parker, I'm Daniel Richardson, Ethan's father. I was wondering if Lily might like to come over for a play date this weekend with Ethan. He's been asking about it all week." Grace's face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, worry, then something that looked almost like panic. Her hands twisted nervously around the strap of her purse. "That's incredibly kind of you to offer, but I don't think we can. We're quite busy this weekend." Lily has responsibilities at home. Lily, who had been signing excitedly with Ethan about a book they'd both read, caught the end of the conversation and tugged insistently on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, can I please go play with Ethan? He has so many wonderful books, and he said his house has a big yard where we could practice signs outside, and maybe Noah could come too." "Lily, honey, we've talked about this before," Grace said quietly. But Daniel caught the internal struggle evident in her voice, the way her resolve seemed to be cracking. "We can't just impose on people." Ethan looked between the adults, his intuitive nature picking up on the sudden tension in the air. His hands moved hesitantly. "Did I do something wrong? Did I say something that made Lily's mom not like me?" "No, buddy. Absolutely not," Daniel reassured him quickly, kneeling to Ethan's level. "You've done nothing wrong." He turned back to Grace, noticing the way she seemed to shrink into herself. "Perhaps we could meet at a park, something more neutral. Or Lily and Noah could come over for just an hour or two. Ethan has been happier this week than I've seen him in years." At the mention of Noah's name, Grace's carefully maintained facade visibly cracked. He's not feeling well today. He gets sick sometimes when he doesn't." She stopped abruptly, but Lily's expression had shifted to deep concern. She signed something quickly to Ethan that made the little boy's eyes widen with understanding and concern. Ethan looked up at Daniel with an expression far too mature and knowing for an 8-year-old. "Dad," Ethan signed privately to Daniel, making sure Grace couldn't see. "Lily says Noah gets sick a lot because they don't have enough food sometimes. She shares her school lunch with him every day, but it's not always enough." Daniel felt his chest ache painfully. The worn clothes, the deep exhaustion, the reluctance to accept social invitations, the nervous glances at luxury cars. Suddenly, Grace Parker's behavior made heartbreaking sense. "Mrs. Parker," Daniel said as gently as he could, "why don't we have both kids come over tomorrow? I could pick them up around noon, and we could order pizza and just let the kids play. Nothing fancy, just a casual get-together between friends." Grace's fierce pride warred visibly with her children's obvious needs, and Daniel could see the exact moment her motherly love won out over her stubborn independence. "If you're absolutely sure it wouldn't be too much trouble. Lily has been so happy this week." "No trouble at all," Daniel reassured her warmly, already making mental notes about preparing extra food and finding ways to send leftovers home without damaging Grace's dignity. The kids deserve to just be kids. That night, Ethan asked the question that had been weighing heavily on Daniel's mind all afternoon. "Dad, why is Lily's family so sad? Why don't they have enough food? Doesn't every family have enough?" Daniel chose his words very carefully. "Sometimes good people go through really hard times, buddy. What matters most is that Lily is your friend, and real friends help each other in any way they can." Ethan nodded with a solemnity that broke Daniel's heart, then signed with fierce determination. "Tomorrow, I'm going to share everything I have with Lily and Noah, just like Lily shares everything with me every day." On Saturday morning, Daniel drove through increasingly run-down neighborhoods to an address that made his heart sink with every passing block. The apartment complex was a study in urban decay. Broken windows, hastily covered with cardboard and duct tape, weeds growing through massive cracks in the pavement, graffiti covering most surfaces, and the overwhelming smell of mildew and desperation. When Grace answered the door after several knocks, Daniel had to force himself not to react visibly to the sparse, cold apartment behind her. The furniture was minimal and clearly second-hand. The walls were bare, except for children's drawings taped up with loving care, and the kitchen consisted of a single hot plate and a mini-fridge that hummed loudly with mechanical effort. Lily appeared almost instantly with a small boy clutching her hand protectively. Noah, with the same golden hair and bright blue eyes as his sister, but with a fragility that spoke of too many worries for such a young child. The 5-year-old hid shyly behind Lily's legs, but when Ethan got out of Daniel's car and began to sign, "Hello, I'm Ethan. I'm so happy to meet you," Noah's entire face transformed with pure delight. The drive to Daniel's estate in the prestigious Lincoln Park neighborhood was quiet, but Daniel watched in the rearview mirror as the three children communicated in rapid, fluent sign language, building an instant bond that transcended their different circumstances. Lily was clearly translating everything for Noah, ensuring he felt included in every conversation. Ethan's excitement at showing his new friends his home was absolutely infectious. He led them through the spacious rooms with obvious pride, but Daniel noticed something beautiful and touching happening. Ethan was instinctively adapting his tour to Noah's shorter attention span and obvious overstimulation, making sure the younger boy felt safe and included at every step. In the sprawling backyard, Lily taught both boys an intricate game she had clearly invented, combining sign language storytelling with an elaborate version of tag. Daniel found himself completely mesmerized watching the three children play together. There were no spoken words needed, just pure connection, joy, and the kind of innocent happiness that seemed to light up the entire yard. "Lily," Daniel signed during a snack break, genuinely curious. "Where did you learn to sign so beautifully? You're more fluent than some professional interpreters I know." Lily's expression turned serious and wise beyond her 7 years. "I had to learn really fast when Noah was a baby and scared all the time. Mum was working 2 jobs after Dad left us, and Noah would cry for hours because no one could understand what he needed or wanted. So I practiced every night with library books and YouTube videos until I could be his voice and his ears in the world." The crushing weight of responsibility this tiny 7-year-old had carried hit Daniel like a physical blow to the chest. While Ethan had enjoyed teams of tutors, therapists, and specialists, Lily had taught herself an entire language out of pure love and desperate necessity. When Daniel served lunch, he made sure to pack up extra sandwiches, fruit, and snacks for later, watching Lily's careful, practiced movements as she wrapped them in napkins, no doubt planning to stretch them into future meals for herself and Noah. As the afternoon drew to a close, Noah fell asleep on the plush sofa between Ethan and Lily, utterly exhausted from more active play than he had likely experienced in months. Lily gently stroked his hair while Ethan carefully draped a soft blanket over him. Both older children were instinctively protective of the sleeping boy. "Thank you," Lily signed to Daniel, her young face serious and grateful. "Noah hasn't smiled this much or slept this peacefully in a very long time. This was like a dream day for us." That night, after dropping the Parker children home and watching them disappear into the bleak apartment building, Daniel couldn't shake the image of Lily's and Noah's deeply grateful faces. Ethan was already enthusiastically planning their next playdate, chattering about games they could teach Noah and books Lily might like to borrow from his extensive library. For the first time since Amanda's tragic death, Daniel felt something fundamental shifting inside him. It wasn't just gratitude for Ethan's obvious happiness, but a growing sense that this unexpected friendship might be changing them all in ways he couldn't yet fully comprehend. Monday morning brought a completely unexpected visitor to Daniel's corporate office. His assistant knocked nervously and announced that a Mrs. Grace Parker was in the lobby asking to see him. No appointment, no warning, just a desperate determination that had somehow gotten her past building security. Grace sat rigidly in the expensive leather chair across from his imposing mahogany desk, wearing the same faded navy blue dress she'd worn to pick up Lily every day that week. Her hands were trembling visibly as she clutched a worn manila folder, and her eyes darted around the opulent office with obvious discomfort. "Mr. Richardson, I need to be completely honest with you about something important, about who we really are and why we really change schools. Lily and Noah deserve better than the lies I've been telling." Daniel leaned forward attentively, sensing the critical importance of this moment and the courage it had taken for Grace to come here. Lily had to leave Lincoln Elementary because she was being systematically bullied, not for being different herself, but for constantly defending Noah from cruel children and indifferent teachers. Other kids would mock him for the sounds he makes when he tries to talk. They'd knock his hearing aids out of his ears, and Lily would get into physical fights protecting him. Grace's voice cracked with pain and exhaustion. The school administration said she was becoming increasingly aggressive and disruptive and strongly suggested Noah might be better served in a special facility where he wouldn't be such a distraction to the other students. Daniel felt rage building in his chest, not at Grace, but at a system that had failed these vulnerable children so completely. "There's more," Grace continued, tears threatening to spill. "I've been working 3 different cleaning jobs at night to keep us afloat. But Noah has been having terrible nightmares about school, and Lily has been staying up to comfort him instead of sleeping. Her grades were dropping because she was exhausted, and I was terrified I was failing them both as a mother." She opened the manila folder with trembling hands, revealing official-looking documents. Child Services has been asking questions about Noah's frequent absences and Lily's defensive behavior. "I moved us here hoping for a fresh start, but I'm scared they'll follow and decide I'm an unfit mother." Looking directly at Daniel with fierce maternal protection burning in her eyes, she said, "I'm telling you all this because Lily absolutely adores Ethan, and Noah talks about him constantly using signs Lily taught him. But if you're going to pull Ethan away from us when you find out we're poor and potentially under investigation, please just do it now before they get any more attached and have their hearts broken again." The raw, painful honesty of her words struck Daniel like a revelation. Here was a mother who had sacrificed absolutely everything for her children, asking for nothing, but absolutely terrified of losing the one bright spot of happiness in their difficult lives. "Grace," Daniel said gently, his voice filled with genuine respect, "Ethan has learned more about friendship, kindness, and what truly matters in life in 1 week with Lily than he has in years of expensive tutoring and therapy. You are not failing your children. You are raising extraordinary, compassionate human beings against impossible odds." Grace's carefully maintained composure finally cracked completely, and tears streamed down her face. "In fact," Daniel continued, a brilliant idea forming in his mind, "I have a serious proposal for you. My company is launching a new accessibility and inclusion initiative. We desperately need someone who truly understands sign language, special needs advocacy, and what families like ours actually need. Would you consider working for us as our Director of Accessibility Services?" Grace stared at him in complete shock. "You're offering me a real job with benefits. I'm offering you an opportunity to use your hard-won experience and Lily's expertise to help other families navigate challenges you've already conquered." Daniel smiled warmly. "And Lily and Noah would be welcome in our company's excellent daycare program, which just so happens to have the best special education support in the city." For the first time since he'd met her, Grace Parker smiled. Really, truly smiled. And Daniel understood something profound. Sometimes life's greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. 3 weeks later, Daniel stood in his office watching Grace Parker command a boardroom full of executives with quiet confidence. Her transformation had been remarkable, gone were the worn clothes and exhausted demeanor, replaced by professional attire and a newfound sense of purpose. But what impressed him most was how she had maintained her gentle authenticity while earning the respect of his typically demanding corporate team. "The key to our accessibility initiative isn't just compliance," Grace was explaining to the head of marketing, her hands moving expressively as she spoke. "It's understanding that nearly 20% of our potential customers have some form of disability. When we make our products truly accessible, we're not just doing the right thing, we're significantly expanding our market." Ethan and Noah had become inseparable after school, spending their time at the company's exceptional childcare center, while Lily helped other children learn basic sign language. The sight of Ethan patiently teaching Noah to read had become a daily highlight for Daniel. Watching his son develop confidence and leadership skills he'd never shown before. But not everyone in Daniel's world was embracing the changes. "Daniel, darling, we need to talk." Victoria Blackwell, one of Chicago's most influential socialites and a key client, cornered him at a charity gala the following Saturday. Her perfectly manicured fingers tapped against her champagne flute as she surveyed the room. "People are talking about your new situation." "My situation?" Daniel kept his voice carefully neutral, though he could feel tension building in his shoulders. "This woman you've hired, her children mixing with Ethan, it's causing quite a stir in our circle." Victoria's voice carried that particular brand of upper-class disdain Daniel had grown to despise. "The board at Lincoln Park Academy is concerned about the influence these children might have on the other students. We do maintain certain standards after all." Daniel felt his jaw tighten. Lily and Noah are extraordinary children who have brought joy and friendship into Ethan's life. If that threatens someone's standards, perhaps those standards need to be examined. Victoria's laugh was cold and calculated. "Oh, Daniel, you're being naive. That woman has clearly maneuvered her way into your company and your life quite strategically. A poor single mother with 2 children, befriending the lonely billionaire widower. It's almost textbook." The accusation hit Daniel like a physical blow, not because he believed it, but because he realized others might. That night, as he watched Grace helping Ethan and Noah with homework while Lily read aloud to all 3, doubt began to creep into his mind for the first time. Grace looked up from Noah's math worksheet and caught Daniel's troubled expression. "Everything okay? You seem worried about something." "Just work stress," Daniel lied, but he noticed how Grace's face tightened slightly, as if she sensed the shift in his mood. Later that evening, Ethan approached Daniel with unusual seriousness. "Dad, some kids at school said mean things about Lily and Noah today. They said poor kids don't belong at our school, and that Lily is just pretending to be my friend because you're rich." Daniel felt his heart sink. "What did you say to them?" "I told them they were stupid and don't understand real friendship," Ethan signed fiercely. "But Dad, Lily looked really sad when she heard them. She asked me if you think she's just pretending too." The innocent question cut right to Daniel's core, forcing him to confront the ugly doubts Victoria had planted. Looking at his son's earnest face, he realized how toxic and destructive those thoughts were, and how they could destroy the most genuine relationship either of them had experienced in years. The crisis began with a phone call on Tuesday morning that changed everything. Daniel was reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant announced that Dr. Patricia Coleman from Child Protective Services was on the line requesting an immediate meeting regarding the Parker family situation. "Mr. Richardson, I'm calling because your name has come up in our investigation into Lily and Noah Parker's living situation. We've received reports suggesting that Mrs. Parker may be exploiting her relationship with you for financial gain, potentially putting her children at risk." Daniel felt ice form in his stomach. That is absolutely ridiculous. Grace is an exemplary mother and a valued employee. Who made these accusations? I can't disclose our sources, but the reports suggest the children are being coached to form attachments with wealthy families. We need to conduct interviews with all parties involved, including Ethan, to ensure no manipulation is occurring. When Daniel shared the devastating news with Grace, her reaction was everything he had feared. The color drained from her face, and she sank into her office chair as if her legs could no longer support her. "I knew this would happen," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I should never have let myself believe we could be happy. Every time things get better, something destroys it." "Grace, we will fight this together," Daniel insisted, but he could see the defeat in her eyes. "No, Daniel, I won't let them drag you and Ethan into this mess. The best thing I can do for my children is remove them from this situation before it gets worse." Her voice grew stronger with maternal resolve. "I'm resigning, effective immediately. Lily and Noah will not be returning to the academy." The next morning, Ethan's reaction to Lily's absence was heartbreaking. He sat at their shared desk, signing, "Where is Lily?" over and over, until Mrs. Collins gently explained that Lily wouldn't be coming back to school. That afternoon, Daniel found Ethan in his room, tears streaming down his face as he clutched a drawing Lily had made for him. "Dad, did I do something wrong? Did I make Lily's family go away like Mommy went away?" The comparison to Amanda's death hit Daniel like a sledgehammer. "No, buddy, this isn't your fault, and it isn't permanent like what happened with Mommy. Sometimes grown-ups make things complicated when they should be simple. Can we go see Lily and Noah, please? I need to tell them they're still my best friends." When Daniel and Ethan arrived at the Parkers' apartment building, they found Grace frantically packing boxes with the desperate efficiency of someone who had fled before. Lily was sitting in the corner with Noah, both children crying silently as they watched their world fall apart again. "Grace, please don't do this," Daniel pleaded. "We can fight these accusations together. I have the best lawyers in Chicago." "And what happens when the investigation drags on for months?" Grace's voice was fierce with protective desperation. "What happens when the media gets involved and Ethan's life is disrupted? What happens when your business relationships suffer because you're associated with a family under CPS investigation?" Lily looked at Ethan with tear-filled eyes and signed, "I'm sorry we made trouble for you and your dad. You're the best friend I've ever had." Ethan's reply broke everyone's heart. "You didn't make trouble. You brought happiness. Please don't leave me alone again." As they drove home in crushing silence, Daniel realized that Victoria Blackwell's warning had been more than cruel gossip. It had been a threat. And now the three people who had brought light back into their lives were being driven away by the very society he'd spent years building his reputation within. That night, Daniel made a decision that would change everything. If his wealth and status couldn't protect the people he'd come to love like family, then maybe it was time to find out what really mattered. By Thursday morning, Daniel had assembled a team of Chicago's most aggressive family law attorneys, but the damage was already spreading like wildfire through the city's social networks. The story had somehow leaked to the press. Billionaire's son's friendship under investigation, child services questions, motives of poor family. The headlines were brutal and reductive, painting Grace as a calculating opportunist and Daniel as a naive widower being manipulated. Photographers camped outside Ethan's school, the Parkers' apartment building, and Daniel's office, turning their private crisis into a public spectacle. Victoria Blackwell's influence became crystal clear when three major clients suddenly cancelled their contracts, citing concerns over Richardson Industries' judgment. Board members who had praised Daniel for years were now questioning his decision-making skills. "The optics are terrible, Daniel," his longtime business partner, Robert Sullivan, explained during an emergency meeting. "The company's stock price has dropped 15% in 3 days. Our investors are nervous about leadership that appears emotionally compromised." Emotionally compromised. Daniel's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Because I hired a qualified woman and allowed my son to have friends? Because you blurred lines between personal and professional relationships in a way that is now hurting all of our employees?" Robert shot back bluntly. "We have 2,000 people depending on this company for their families. The board is considering a motion of no confidence." Meanwhile, the situation at Ethan's school was deteriorating rapidly. 3 influential families had pulled their children from the academy, citing inappropriate influences in the educational environment. The headmistress, Dr. Margaret Hayes, called Daniel in for an emergency meeting on Friday morning. "Mr. Richardson, I understand this is a difficult personal situation," she began, her hands clasped nervously on her desk. "But I'm getting pressure from the school's board of trustees. Some parents are questioning whether Ethan should remain here while this situation unfolds." Daniel felt a cold fury build inside him. "Are you suggesting my son, who has done nothing but befriend 2 wonderful children, should be punished for the small-mindedness of a few adults?" "That's not what I'm saying," the headmistress backpedaled quickly. "But you must understand the delicate position we're in. Our reputation, our donors, your reputation." Daniel interrupted, rising slowly. "Let me make something clear, Dr. Hayes. If this school expels my son for having a compassionate heart, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of education you truly provide here." That afternoon, Ethan came home with more than just sadness. He was clearly confused and hurt. Some children at school had started avoiding him altogether. instructed by their parents to stay clear of the Richardson situation. Others made cruel comments about how poor kids cause trouble. "Dad, what does gold digger mean?" Ethan signed during dinner, his small hands moving slowly. "Tommy Harrison said Lily was a gold digger and that I was stupid for not seeing it." Daniel felt something inside his chest break. His 8-year-old son shouldn't even know that word, let alone have to apply it to his best friend. "It means someone pretends to be your friend to get something from you," Daniel explained carefully. "But Tommy is wrong about Lily. She's your friend because you are kind and funny and a wonderful boy, not because of our money." "Then why are people saying these things?" Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "Why do they want to hurt Lily and Noah? They never did anything bad to anyone." Daniel pulled his son into his lap, feeling the weight of the entire situation. "Sometimes, buddy, people who have never struggled can't understand people who have. They get scared of things they don't know." "Oh, but Lily isn't scary," Ethan protested. "She's the nicest person I know, and Noah just wants to play and learn new things." "I know, son, and we're going to keep fighting to show everyone who they really are." But even as he said the words, Daniel wondered if it was already too late. Victoria's Whisper campaign had been devastatingly effective. In just 1 week, she had managed to turn a beautiful story of friendship into a sordid scandal of exploitation. Worst of all, Daniel could see how the narrative fit perfectly into people's existing prejudices. A poor, single mother with 2 children, one with a disability, suddenly entering the life of a billionaire widower. To cynical minds, it seemed too obvious to be genuine. The following Monday, Daniel discovered the story had spread beyond Chicago. National gossip blogs had picked up the story, some with even more sensational headlines. "Tech billionaire duped by manipulative mom," and "Deaf child used as bait in billion-dollar con." Each article twisted the facts a little more, painting Grace as a cold calculator who had coached her children to manipulate Ethan and Daniel. The photos of Lily and Noah were pixelated, but it still made Daniel sick to his stomach to see their innocent faces associated with terms like scheme and emotional fraud. The pressure at work intensified when his largest corporate client, Pinnacle Industries, scheduled an emergency meeting. CEO Margaret Thornton was direct. "Daniel, we have a 15-year relationship, so I'll be frank. Our board is concerned about the negative publicity. We have shareholders, institutional investors, who are asking questions about our partners." "What exactly are they asking?" Daniel kept his voice controlled. "If a man can be so easily manipulated in his personal life, what assurances do we have about his professional judgment?" Margaret sighed. "It's not fair, but it's the reality of corporate business." "So you're suggesting we terminate our contract?" "I'm suggesting you might consider stepping away from the personal situation until things cool down, publicly. Let your legal department handle it quietly." Daniel stood up slowly. "Margaret, if you believe I would abandon an innocent family being persecuted by prejudice just to preserve a business contract, then you never really knew me. And if that's the kind of business partner you want, then perhaps it's best we do end our relationship." As he walked out of the Pinnacle building, Daniel knew he had just sacrificed a $50 million contract, but for the first time in weeks, he felt at peace with the decision. That night, he called his lead attorney, James Morrison, a man he'd known for over a decade. "James, I want you to give me the brutal truth. What are our real chances of fighting this?" There was a long pause. "Honestly, Daniel, in a court of law, we have a solid case. Grace is clearly an excellent mother. The children are well adjusted, and we can prove the allegations are baseless. But in the court of public opinion, it's much trickier." "Go on." "Victoria Blackwell has connections all over this city. She's being subtle about it, but she's planting doubt among the right people, and frankly, her narrative makes sense to people who want to believe it." "What narrative?" "That you're going through a midlife crisis, vulnerable after your wife's death, and were targeted by a clever woman who knew exactly how to use her children to get to your heart and your wallet." Daniel closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the words. There's more, James continued reluctantly. We have intel that Victoria is pressuring other parents at the school to file formal complaints about Lily and Noah disrupting the learning environment. If she gets 3 or 4 families to sign on, CPS might decide there's a pattern of problem behavior. Based on what? Lily defending Noah from bullying mostly, but they're framing it as repeated aggression and inability to adapt socially. It's completely unfair, but it could be effective. Daniel felt a despair he hadn't experienced since Amanda died. He was watching innocent people be destroyed because of their association with him, and his money and influence seemed useless against a well-coordinated campaign of malicious whispers. It was then that he made the bravest decision of his life. If he couldn't win this battle in the shadows, he would fight it in the light of day. Because that little girl saved your son, Daniel. If you don't fight for this family, you'll be making the biggest mistake of your life. That afternoon, Daniel called a press conference that would either vindicate the Parker family or destroy his business empire. I am here to address the malicious rumors surrounding the Parker family, he said to a room of skeptical reporters. Lily Parker is not a coached child exploiting my son. She is a 7-year-old prodigy who taught herself sign language to care for her deaf brother. He displayed Lily's test scores. The allegations against her mother are based on prejudice and a deliberate campaign by people who believe friendship should be limited by economic status. Grace Parker is the best employee I have ever hired. Her children have brought more joy into my life than years of business success. If defending this family cost me everything I've built, so be it. Some things matter more than money. The press conference created a media firestorm that divided Chicago. The immediate fallout was severe. More clients canceled contracts, but something unexpected was also happening. Hundreds of families with disabled children were reaching out to support the Parkers. Dr. Patricia Coleman arrived at Daniel's office on Tuesday with a very different demeanor. Mr. Richardson, I owe you and the Parker family an apology. Our investigation has found that the initial complaints were made by someone with clear personal motivations. She showed him detailed psychological evaluations. Lily tested off the charts for emotional intelligence. This isn't manipulation. It's genius-level empathy. And the recommendation for foster care? Withdrawn completely. In fact, we're recommending Grace for our Parental Excellence Recognition Program. However, the damage may have already been done. Grace has stopped returning our calls. I'm afraid they may have left the city entirely. Daniel felt a surge of panic. That afternoon, he and Ethan drove to the Parkers' apartment building, only to find it empty. The landlord confirmed their worst fears. Grace had moved out with no forwarding address. Ethan, we're going to find them. No matter how long it takes, we're going to bring our family back. Promise? Ethan asked with 8-year-old vulnerability. I promise, Daniel signed back. Wednesday morning brought a breakthrough when Mrs. Collins called. Daniel, I think I know where they went. Lily once mentioned that her grandmother lived in a small town in Wisconsin called Millbrook. Within the hour, Daniel and Ethan were driving north, following the only lead they had. What if they don't want to see us? Ethan asked during a stop. Daniel knelt to Ethan's level. Real friendship means standing by each other during the hardest times. Lily and Noah need to know they're not alone. The small town of Millbrook appeared around a bend like something from a postcard. As they pulled up to a modest farmhouse, Ethan suddenly grabbed Daniel's arm. Dad, look! He pointed to the yard where 2 small figures were raking leaves. Lily looked up at the sound of their car, her eyes widening in disbelief. For a moment, she stood frozen. Then she dropped her rake and ran toward them with Noah right behind. Ethan jumped from the car and met them halfway, all 3 children colliding in a tangle of arms and silent, joyful tears. Ethan, how did you find us? Lily's hands flew through the air. I thought we'd never see you again. We could never forget you, Ethan signed back fiercely. You're my family. Dad and I came to take you home. Grace emerged from the house, her face a mask of shock, joy, and then deep worry. The elderly woman, clearly Lily's grandmother, stepped forward. Young man, I'm Dorothy Parker. These children have been through enough trauma. Grandma Dot, "This is Ethan's dad," Lily interrupted. "He's the one who gave Mom a job. He's good." Daniel knelt to get on eye level with the three children. "Lily, Noah, I need to tell you something important. The people who tried to tear us apart were wrong about everything." He turned to Grace. "They said you were using the kids to take advantage of me. But the truth is, you saved Ethan from a life of loneliness. You saved me." Grace's grandmother listened intently as Daniel continued. "My money and status couldn't protect the people I love from prejudice. But standing up for what's right is worth the fight." "And your company? Your reputation?" Grace asked. "The company will rebuild stronger. I'd rather be known as the man who fought for Lily and Noah Parker than the billionaire who stayed silent." Ethan suddenly stepped forward. "I want to tell you something important. Dad and I decided we want to ask Lily, Noah, and Mrs. Grace to be our real family." Lily's eyes widened. "What does that mean?" Daniel felt his heart pounding. "It means I'm asking your mother if she would consider marrying me. Not for convenience, but because I've fallen in love with the woman who taught me what courage looks like. It means asking if you two would like to be Ethan's official sister and brother." Grace's grandmother spoke with the wisdom of 8 decades. "Grace, I've watched you raise these kids alone for years. Maybe it's time you let someone sacrifice something for your happiness." Grace looked at Daniel with awe. "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious. Amanda told me that family is about choosing to love someone every single day. Ethan chose Lily and Noah as his siblings on day 1. I'm just catching up." Lily threw her arms around Daniel's waist. "Does this mean Ethan can be my brother forever? If your mum says yes, then yes to all of it." Grace's answer came not in words, but in the way she finally allowed herself to lean into Daniel's embrace. 3 years of fierce independence melting away into the relief of shared love. 6 months later, Daniel stood in his backyard, watching his new family play together on a spring morning. Lily was teaching Noah and Ethan a complex game that involved storytelling through sign language, all 3 children laughing silently. Grace walked up with coffee. "Any regrets about the billionaire bachelor lifestyle?" Daniel watched the children play. "Only that it took me so long to realize what I was missing." The company's accessibility initiative had become a national model, with Grace leading seminars across the country. Lily and Noah thrived in their new school, and Ethan had become the confident, joyful child Amanda always knew he could be. That night, as Daniel tucked all 3 children into bed, Ethan made an observation that captured everything perfectly. "Dad, remember when I used to be sad because no one could talk to me? Now I have a sister who taught me that the best conversations happen with your heart, not just with your hands." Sometimes, the most profound transformations begin with the simplest acts of kindness. A 7-year-old girl choosing to befriend a lonely boy, a mother refusing to give up on her children's dreams, and a father learning that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the love that fills your home with laughter and hope. As Daniel looked around at his extraordinary family, he finally understood what Amanda had tried to teach him all along. Love multiplies when you share it. Hope grows when you nurture it. And family is found wherever hearts choose to connect across any divide. Did you enjoy this touching story? Let us know in the comments which part moved you the most. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that will warm your heart. What story would you like to see next? Share your ideas below. Your suggestion might just be our next great narrative.